Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Julia, thanks for being here.
Oh, excited to talk to you today.
Everybody, today we're joined by Julia Bonner. She's the founder and president of Pierce PR. They're a Nashville-based, women-led agency. They've built a strong reputation working with professional service firms and AEC companies across the country. I'm super excited. There's a lot of overlap with the companies that we work with at MAP, and so it'll be really great to talk today. Julia launched Pierce nearly a decade ago, named after her brother, which I find fascinating. I want to learn more about. And under her leadership, they've grown significantly. They're a trusted partner. They've known for their thoughtful strategy, storytelling, and strong culture. So excited to talk about how they've grown, how you've grown Pierce PR, and lessons along the way that you might be able to share with our community. So again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So before we go into questions, I always like to kick back and say, is there anything else that you want to add to that or tell the audience about yourself or Pierce?
The only thing I'd add, 10 years has been, I think, a great learning experience. And I know some of the things we're going to talk about today really have been a lot of work on the business now that we've gotten to this point and be able to push us forward. But I think you hit on a lot of it. It's great to be in Nashville and work with clients all over the country and be back after living in New York and many other places. It's been a great place to grow business. And I'm excited to share what I can that will hopefully be helpful to those listening.
And you're a Nashville native. We talked about that on the pre-show, how Nashville's gone through quite the evolution. Now it's just, party city and all sorts of craziness. But, look, there's lots of PR firms. What inspired you to start this? And what do you view as like your specialty, your differentiation? Why did you start Pierce PR?
Yeah, so I've always been in the PR and communications world and have worked for the other agencies I worked for were based in New York. And I kind of went through a time when I was living in New York. I went to grad school, continued my career, and decided it was time to make a change. And so I moved back to Nashville. Again, obviously, this was over 10 years ago, and I had the opportunity to open a Nashville office for the firm I worked for at the time in New York, which was a fantastic opportunity. And in the first year, I really learned a lot. But a couple things were one, if I can do this for somebody else, I could do this for myself. And then really to your question of why is there were a lot of things that I had experienced in the agency world that I was like, I could really make a change here if I did this for myself. One of the things that are like agency spaces in general, I think get a bad reputation for churn and burn. Like you're just working around the clock for clients. You're having to do, all of these things because, obviously we are here to serve our clients. And while that's true, I was kind of like, this doesn't really make sense to me. Like, would I want somebody who's doing something really important for me to be around 24/7? Like, they're probably not doing their best work. And how we could rein that in where we could be known for doing really good work, but setting boundaries that allowed us to have a culture that we were really proud of and that would attract people to it. And so I think that's been one thing I've been really proud of is when we have people join our team or come to us from other agencies, there's usually a mark like, this is a little bit different. I'm not expected to do some of the things that I have been at other agencies. And I mean that certainly not as a knock on them, but it's been a truth of our space for a really long time. So that was a big reason behind why. And then the work we do now is work that I still get excited about every day when I wake up. And being able to really focus on that and go after clients that are a great fit and a partner, sort of as you spoke to in the intro, and value what we do. It's like it keeps me energized still all the time. So those would probably be the biggies.
That's pretty cool.
on
But
the
when you're
line.
energized
Yeah,
like that and you are passionate about what you do, that's going to shine through in how you work with your clients, right? The
no
work you
doubt.
do, but also the relationships you have. I mean, everything's going to go as opposed to somebody who's just like going through the motions. So that's awesome. When I know you have an expertise and a specialty in AEC with a specific vertical, was that the same at the prior agency too, and carried that through, or did you choose that when you started Pierce PR?
I have been exposed to an AEC for us is architecture, engineering, and construction. There's a lot of interplay in the industry and how these firms work together to bring projects and all kinds of things to life. I had been exposed to it at my prior firm, but they really, I would say they were positioned strongly as B2B, but it was not industry exclusive in any sense. And it was a lot of public companies. We did investor relations as well. So you kind of needed to know both sides of the coin, but it was a great sort of entree into, some of the things that we do now and how these companies operate. And now we've obviously developed even deeper expertise in understanding that, understanding how relationships are built, how work gets awarded, and all of that stuff to really serve our clients and understand their pain points and how we can help be a solution.
Um, with having a specialty in AEC, does that mean you've had to say no to lots of business over the years?
Well, it's the timing of the question is fantastic because we've had this specialty probably for the last 18 months.
Okay.
We've always been B2B, but we really honed our positioning, which has been, one of those inflection points of growth where we were like, we can't be all things to all people.
Hmm.
We need to pick our lane and really, market to that, speak to that, understand that with deep, deep, like, expertise truly, how
Yeah.
we do that. So yeah, we have, since certainly making that really our external position, um, had to say no to things or just like we're not the best fit anymore. And I think that's a healthy place to be. Certainly a scary place to be, especially when you make that pivot. One of the pieces of feedback when we started our leadership team started talking to everybody about, hey, we are making this change. We've always had this growing subset of clients, but it's really taken off. We love this industry. We know this industry. Here are all the reasons we're doing it. There was feedback of like, well, what does this mean for all the other things that we do and have done? And I think that was really good discussion. And it was necessary to get everybody comfortable and aligned on why we were doing this and what it means. But it's been a huge opportunity for us. And I think it has allowed us to accelerate our growth because now we're known for something and get a lot more work coming to us because we are, a firm that really gets the space.
Yeah.
And there's not a
Yeah.
huge learning curve. Yeah.
What brought you to that point? I love that because I think it's super important. We talked about this. If you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. Like being known as an expert in a particular vertical or space or specialty, that's really valuable. This is scary, right? Nobody wants to say no to business, especially when you're trying to grow. But sometimes you have to. You have to say
Yeah.
no. You can't say yes to everything. But what brought you to that point?
I think, as an entrepreneur, being a student of the business is so
Mm,
important. And one of the things that really started to resonate with me over the past few years was the concept of positioning. It's like we had said B2B, it's not that we didn't have a position. It's just wasn't strong enough when we were in the room, perhaps against another firm that would be considered a competitor, that somebody would say, well, this is their focus. This is the thing that they know and they are going to deliver for you. And, so I think one is we had an amazing client concentration that was growing in that area. We truly love the industry because it's an industry that oftentimes doesn't have the discipline that we bring in house. A
mm,
lot of their function around marketing and PR is like proposal development, business development. There's always sort of like a second role in the marketing title.
yeah.
And so, but once these companies understand, because it's a very competitive industry, how what we do helps position them, make them more competitive, make them win the right kind of work, it was like, well, we really have an opportunity to make a difference here. And that felt really good. It's like, we understand how this works and we understand how this can be applied to these types of firms and how to communicate that. And then I think there was this other part of it that, I know a lot of business owners go through where I'm looking out at the competitive landscape and I'm like, there aren't other one-to-one firms who come up against us who have this focus. Oftentimes it's large firms who focus on AEC as part of, 9 other verticals, technology, manufacturing, AEC, and it's one of those things. And in Nashville, especially, we've got an incredible healthcare, the largest healthcare community in the country, and there are firms here focused on serving that audience or serving the entertainment industry. But again, this is it's a developing city still. And so there was like the opportunity in the business environment, and then clearly we were making really good headway, had some good momentum in our business serving this industry. And I think the marriage and the timing of that really came together in a way that was like, if I ignore this, there's not going to be a better time to do it. And at some point, I think not positioning ourselves to our strength is just going to hold us back from growing. And being able to recognize that and just say, like, yeah, we are making this change was, I think, a good decision, but definitely a scary one in other ways where you're like, I don't want to alienate people or make our team feel disconnected or any of that. But most of that got resolved naturally and it wasn't that big of a deal in the end.
I love that. We've been talking a lot internally here about decision making recently, and there's been some good articles. There's a guy named Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he had a good article recently which talked about like the cost of decision making, right? Like you want to optimize for making sure that your decisions are not super expensive, right? So like I think about that decision to go after that specialty or vertical or have that niche. It's not permanent, right? You could do it, and if it goes, you try it out for a year. If it goes well, awesome. If it doesn't, you can always change back or change to something else, right? It's not a decision forever. But like having that, I think, courage and conviction to make that decision is super important. And some entrepreneurs struggle with it, and some are like, all right, this is what we're doing. Let's go.
Totally. And it's funny that you mention him because I know there are so many resources entrepreneurs are kind of flooded with, like, read this book, you got to listen to this podcast and do these things. But 10x is greater than 2x, and the who,
Mm,
not how, the Benjamin Hardy, those concepts really have been great drivers
yeah.
of this sort of pivot point in decision making. And really, it's like, you can't scale a business if you are doing all things for all people. And in that book, especially, they talk a lot about like focusing on your highest value, high margin, where you're
Mhm.
really starting to see where you're making an impact and that is fueling your business. And once you see that, you need to pay attention to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that totally resonates with me. And his work in particular has been very much a part of how we have shaped some of this.
Yeah. Our founder, Mike Cato, prior is not founder, our current CEO and owner, Mike Cato. The Map was founded 65 years ago, so that was before his time. But
We just aged him.
Mike bought the business, I think 7 years ago. And prior to that, he and two partners had a business called Restaurants on the Run. And they grew that over many years and ended up selling it to Grubhub. But before they did that, before they sold it, they had this huge pivot in their business. And so my understanding is in the beginning years, they sort of just like sold to everybody. And I don't know, it was a particular rough patch and they're going through a hard time. And you mentioned being a student of the business. They had lots of instrumentation and data, which was great. What they discovered was the really profitable clients for them were commercial, right? And so this was like, you imagine you've got all these apps coming out. And I don't know if there's a pre-DoorDash, but like DoorDash, Grubhub, et cetera, Uber Eats. But like they figure out, oh man, there's nobody really serving the commercial clients. And that's where all the
Mm.
profitability is. So they completely changed their business, and that really just unlocked growth for them. And over the next coming years, they had this acquisition strategy. And so they were scaling throughout the country, but it was all locked on that one decision. Okay, we're no longer going B2C, we're just doing B2B, commercial clients. And that was it. So hard decision, right? If you're going to cut out 50% or 60% of your business, but you make that decision and then you align around it and growth follows.
Yeah. No,
Super
I
hard.
love that because it's so true. And now when I, whether it's like books or other just conversations with other entrepreneurs, when I see and hear that kind of thing, I'm like, man, I get the stress and the anxiety around that, but really what it can tee you up to do can be transformational for
Hmm.
the business. But you have to be, as you said earlier, like really courageous and confident that, yes, we can do this. And without doing this, we may just be stuck, where we are for a while. So
Well, I also think one thing too, even if you're not fully courageous or not fully, um, I don't know, you don't have full conviction, you still have to display that to your team. So your
totally.
team has to think, man, they really are fully bought. Even if you're like, shit, I don't know if this is going to work out. They have to think that you're fully bought in because they have to be on board. Right.
Yes.
And that always happens. I mean, I think, you're never going to be fully, I don't know. Right. You're always
No,
going to
you can't
question a
predict
little
the
bit.
future. I know.
Yeah.
If only we could, we would be able to be that way. But you're right. I mean, our team is the one who's carrying this message, who's going to events and talking
Yeah.
about who we are and what we do. And I want them to be confident and excited about how they characterize where they work and what they do and who they work for and all of those things. So yeah, I agree. If you aren't presenting that with confidence, there's likely a lot left to be desired from your team on
Right.
what that means to them, and then the uncertainty creeps in, and that's never good. So yeah,
Never good.
totally.
So now with where Pierce is, what kind of new challenges or unknowns are keeping you up at night? What are you thinking about now as you're positioning Pierce for future growth?
Well, um I was listening to one of the agency podcasts that is probably the one and my favorite to listen. It's there was a line this week that was like, the reward for solving a problem is the next problem. And I think it's like, you're always, that's sort of our job is. So I think
Mhm.
it really depends. I mean, on a macro scale, obviously, just sort of navigating what's to come from an economic perspective this year has just been really interesting for us. And I was seeing or reading this morning that a survey came out that business owners overall are feeling a little bit more optimistic or settling into sort of the new environment as tariffs kind of, people understand what's going on to the best of their ability, but they're still planning to hire and that kind of thing. So I think it's just obviously keeping a pulse on that, making sure that we're not missing anything that could be coming down the pike. And then I think internally, we've got a lot of opportunities now that we have honed our position to really be more intentional about how we go to market with it. So next year, we're looking at doing a lot more like speaking, thought leadership type stuff, the type of stuff we do and help our clients make happen for them, that we are being really strategic about. Now, does this serve the positioning and sort of where the business is going? So that's been a lot of our focus for our strategic planning going into next year is, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're, in front of the right people and the messages that, are really going to resonate and help our clients and prospective clients, do business better. And it's been a lot of conversation around what are the opportunities that we just haven't focused on yet. So that'll be sort of the big thing internally for next year, what we're after.
Hi, if you're a CEO out there who's struggling with focus for your company, aligning your team, accountability, if you're struggling with execution, connecting the dots from where you're at to where you want to be, we've got a great program for you here at MAP. My name is Michael Cato. I'm the CEO. Most importantly, I was a client for 15 years, sold my company to a public company, and then bought MAP so that we can help other entrepreneurs with this specific problem. We're a 60-year-old company. We've worked with 170,000 individual executives and CEOs. We've worked with 15,000 organizations. This is what we do. Click the link below to learn a little bit more about how people just like you, CEOs, have transformed their business and ultimately transformed their life by running through the MAP system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your internal teams a bit. We at MAP, we always talk about accountability and systems and process. What kind of systems do you guys use? What kind of routines or systems do you use for alignment, accountability, just to make sure things are running smoothly?
And when you ask that, are you talking about like practical like tools?
Not necessarily software, but just, I mean, it could be software, I guess, but just anything that you use in your day to day to operate the business, with your existing team.
Yeah, I would say the biggest things are, I mean, we are all in Nashville and we continue to make that a priority from a
Mm,
culture standpoint that our team is geographically concentrated. But that being said, we are not physically together every day. So our biggest systems really are around communication and an in-person cadence that sort of complements that. We believe and have a team that wants to, for the most part, have autonomy and get their work done, but still see each other and build relationships with each other. But they don't necessarily feel like they need to be together 5 days a week, 8 hours a day by any means. And we survey on that every year, like making sure that hasn't
mm,
changed, that they feel like that's, whatever the balance is still working for everybody. So I would say from a system standpoint, we've got several meetings throughout the week that just keep everybody connected. One specifically for our client team. We have one at the end of the week for the whole team that I lead. That's not necessarily about like client deliverables. It's really more agency health. And then we have quarterly meetings that bring us together. We actually just had at the beginning of this week where we report out on our financials, sort of our goals for the quarter, reflect on the prior quarter, that kind of thing. And of course, in between that, there's, a lot of communication. But I think it's for us, it has been building a culture with systems and processes that allow our team to work effectively without feeling, micromanaged if we're not together, but also to ensure that we're building relationships together and thoughtfully and intentionally like we would with our clients, which does mean seeing each other face to
yeah.
face, on a somewhat regular basis. And we've implemented a few things that have helped us do that. But I would say those are the biggies for us.
Okay. I like the hybrid approach. A couple of questions. Um, do you guys have an office or is it all remote as well?
We did, and we got rid of it because nobody wanted to
Yeah.
go to it. So yeah,
I think it's
we
pretty
had it
common.
probably 3 years, and then
Yeah.
like the last year of it, we were kind of like, I mean, do we feel like we're just doing this to check the box? Like we
Yeah.
don't need to make a decision like that. So we have a dedicated space where we meet that everybody pretty much uses type of thing. But we don't have a Pierce office.
Yeah, I would not want to be in commercial real estate these days.
Oh, I know.
Not a great market. But I like that hybrid approach. I think that there's obviously a ton of value to remote. I'm working from home,
Yeah.
but there is a ton of value to the in person as well. How do you guys structure that hybrid approach? And then secondarily, you mentioned goals in that quarterly meeting. Are those the company goals or individual goals?
So to the first, so we structure our hybrid versus in person. It kind of depends on what the meeting is, but I'll give you an example. One, we have a weekly client experience meeting. I'm not part of it. Our client services director oversees it. Once a month, that meeting is in person. Our company meetings that are quarterly are in person. Anytime somebody is trained or onboarded, that is in person. So there are like certain things where it's like,
Yeah,
I think we would be missing opportunity if we just said, let's meet via, Zoom or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
So there are some things built in where we know that's going to happen. And then we also, a woman on our team named it Culture Club, where once a quarter we go somewhere as a team that is not work related. We've done all kinds of different fun stuff to just go, like have time together. And it's not mandatory, but everybody pretty much goes. And, obviously the company pays for it, but it gives us a chance to make sure that we are getting that in-person time. So we have the in-person time focused on the work side of things, but also time where we can just be connected as human beings. And that has seemed to work really well.
that's awesome.
So on that's sort of the hybrid part of it. Now remind me on the second question.
Um, So you mentioned the onboarding. I will tell you, I
Yes.
completely agree with you. I think that is so important for new employees. I think that you lose. That's one of the. There's many positives to remote culture. I think one of the negatives is it takes longer for somebody to ramp up when they just don't hear things in the office and they don't just part of that. They don't get part of that tribal knowledge. It just takes longer to capture it, or
Well,
even part
it's
of the culture.
Yeah, it's that, Andrew, and it's that sort of, truism that first impressions matter. And no
Mm,
matter what you do for somebody on their first day, if they're sitting across the screen, it does not feel as good as if they feel celebrated and welcomed and like you have made time to be with them when they
yeah,
start. Because I mean, to me, I always think about like somebody changing a job and coming to work for me or work for our firm. It's a big life decision. They may have left
sure.
something that they were doing before. They may have we've had people move here from other places. Like I also feel a responsibility to honor that. And I think the
Mm,
first day, and I know there's data around it, it's like if you have a really good first day or onboarding experience, the longevity of that employee is, compounded by sort of what they feel during that. And I think it's
yeah.
really important. I know that's not realistic for every single business that they can do that based on how they operate. But for us, I'm like, I want somebody to know that like we want you here, we care, we want you to feel set up for success. And to me, that level of like knowing that would be hard to replicate virtually.
I think that's a really good approach. The second question was around, you mentioned in your quarterly meeting, you guys reflect on goals for the
Oh,
prior quarter and
yes,
probably
yes,
set
yes.
goals for the next quarter. So is that organization or individual or both?
So the quarterly meetings are organizational goals, but
Mm,
everybody is expected to have individual goals for the quarter. They're just done in a different meeting.
okay.
We don't do annual performance reviews. We do quarterly kind of like check-ins, pulse checks, and reviews as part of that. And that really is sort of driven by the philosophy that um, performance doesn't happen against the calendar year, and if somebody is really excelling, we want to recognize it in real time and be able to
Mm,
have those conversations. So but they are in those meetings expected to present their goals, which are aligned with the company goals, so we present them first and then they have those subsequent meetings where they talk about individual goals.
got it. Okay. And those are reviewed quarterly.
Yeah, exactly.
How often do you find that people are missing? Like, if you had to guess, what percentage of those goals get hit, do you think?
So we set a percentage, which is 80%. So normally there's no more than 4 to 6 goals, I would say. And it's like if
Yep.
you have 15 goals, we're probably missing the boat here.
100%.
But even from a company standpoint, I mean, there are things that we have to move over to the next quarter because, somebody left or we had a big new client that took all the things like life happens. And I think there's
Yep.
part of the message there that you're not going to be at 100% all the time and that's okay, but you shouldn't be at 10%. You shouldn't be at 20%. And so I think they understand that. And what has been helpful is they will like, if a team member is expecting that they might miss something or miss more than one thing that really takes them away from that 80%, they're very proactive now about saying either I was a little bit too ambitious with this goal, or this has
Mm,
happened in my life or in work or whatever, where I need to just talk about how to kind of modify it to make it work for the time, for this particular quarter, whatever it might be. So I would say it's not that they're not always hitting them. But I think because we set them the way that we do and the expectation is really clear, they at least are communicating about why something's not happening beforehand. So it's not like you get into the meeting and, suddenly
yeah.
it's like, well, what happened? Yeah, with all this stuff.
Well, especially if it's a quarter. We always like to
Right.
do monthly goals just because it's faster, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't wanna get to the end of the quarter and see that Tom or Jane missed their goals completely, and it's like, "Well, dude, we just lost 90 days, man." Well, that's too long. At least you can course correct within that using that monthly cadence, but that's also, yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, we always say it's like 4 to 5 goals. If you're hitting 100%, your goals are probably too soft. So
Totally.
80% is usually the target. If you're hitting
Totally.
80%, that's the way to be. And you're never going to hit everything, but as long as you're like constantly improving, constantly iterating, pushing the team, pushing yourself, that's how you're going to see the growth and progress.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. I think every sort of team in business should set their goals sort of at the cadence that's appropriate. Some of the things that we
Mm,
set, I know they can't get done in 30 days, and they might not even
yeah.
get done in 90 days, but there
Hmm.
are things that probably are going to take longer or shorter, and they've got to manage that. But yeah, I think at least being really clear about making sure they have goals and they know what's needed to accomplish them, and if they need the company's support, like, we got to talk about that, and make sure that we're all aligned. It's just really good, healthy conversations to have. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that you all are really intentional and religious about that as well.
How do you think about you mentioned giving people autonomy and culture seems important to you. How do you think about the development or continuously developing your people?
So that sort of is part of our goal for our quarterly check-ins. Is I
Mm,
think one thing that I never had the experience of in prior roles was anything outside of an annual kind of performance review, or if I'm not raising my hand to say, like, I think I could use a resource here, or I just haven't been taught this, it really wouldn't get addressed. And I
yeah,
get why, because it takes a lot of time and energy and sometimes resources to do that. But, I think it's been really important. So from a development standpoint, we do our quarterly meetings with each person, and those are led by our client services, leader, VP. And, on top of that, we have a quarterly learning session that,
mm,
we host. And that sometimes it's presented by a team member, sometimes it's an outside resource, but typically it's driven by a topic that has come out of those meetings. Like, there might be something that, seems to be like a common, um, maybe not challenge or stumbling block, but something that everybody's sort of asking about. We had one, for example, like probably last summer, on just how to really understand all of the AI tools and all of the things that we're getting exposed to. Is like, I don't really want everybody spending 8 hours on this, but if we can bring everyone together and, have an expert really talk through what we need to know and what we need to
yeah.
be really aware of, like that kind of stuff. And then we'll have um our senior leaders, I would say, but some of our junior leaders have done it too, talk about like how to manage people in our
Yeah.
culture, like, and not just sort of the general platitudes, but like, what makes a good manager here? How do you do that? So
Mm.
it's really a mix, but I think the senior level team members, one of their KPIs and goals for the year is always some kind of professional development for the team. So they can choose how they want to execute that, but that's one way that we weave it in.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I like the learning days. I always love when people do that and love to hear how they're figuring out what those topics are. Um,
Same. Yeah, and
yeah.
sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, I didn't even know that you knew, or that you would, like, it's great to have them share about it, because it's such a different experience than maybe, somebody in the leadership seat trying to talk to the same topic. And it's just
Hmm.
really, I feel like the team connects when they're getting knowledge from the people that they report to, and
Hmm.
or work alongside, and it just, I feel like, makes the relationships all the stronger.
It's always good to have the collecting feedback from the teams, so when thinking through how to like tackle a problem in lots of companies, it's like, manager giving the idea and then execution. One of the tools that we always use is called the team consulting, right? So like somebody presents a problem to the group. So you get, this whole team around, somebody presents the problem, states it as a question. How do I X? And it's like, how do I solve X? And they give a little bit of background on it. So, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then everybody goes around the room, around the table, ideas. There's no bad ideas, even though some may be bad ideas, but just, you know, get it out there. And then you go through and you review, and it's timed, right? So it's like, okay, 10 minutes, boom, go, 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 go. And everybody gives their ideas. And it's so great. The results from those exercises are always so, and everybody loves it because they get to,
Yeah.
provide good feedback and get their idea out there. And everybody wants to share their ideas. So we always find those exercises are awesome. And I think the same thing with like learning days. It's like, well, great. What do you want to learn about? What ideas do you have? Getting people to contribute allows them to feel heard, and I think will drive more participation.
Well, I think you're 100% right. And the thing that I have found that's sort of been a sub bullet of like, this is a really good use of our time, is it also teaches people how to frame problems really well.
Mm,
Like the person who's presenting it to say, here's what I've tried, here's where I'm at. And I think sometimes like that critical thinking or maybe just the pace of work, we don't have time to sit and really be able to say, like, let me think through all the things that I've done or have happened here before I go bring this to somebody. And to me, that translates into if somebody brings me a problem, it's like, well, what do I need to know before we dig into this? But it's like it's
Hmm.
a great exercise on both sides of the coin because, like you said, there's the benefit of you get all this fresh thinking, hopefully for your idea, but also it's like you got to be able to synthesize what you need and how you got to this
Yes.
problem before you can offer that up and really get the kind of feedback you want. So I think it's great.
Mm. That's right. That's right. So when you think about the business today, if you could, we always ask this question, if you could like wave a wand and optimize some part of it, improve some part of it, what would that be?
I think it would be that we do a better job of doing what we do for our clients for ourselves. And this
Mm.
inevitably is, I think, a pain point for us because we know how to, communicate and market and build brand reputation. But because our clients are the biggest part of our focus, I
Yeah.
think sometimes that energy that we put into work in other places doesn't always come back. And that's part of obviously, I'm gonna be focused on that to make that happen. But if I could wave a wand, it would be that some of the things that our clients get excited about when we do for them, like we'd be like, we also were able to execute that for ourselves. And I mean, fortunately, it's a problem that we can solve, but it's just one of those things where, we have a client team for the firm just like we would for a client. But when somebody needs something, like it's the first meeting to get pushed. And so I think
Mm.
we're realizing like, hey, we really need to either do this differently or have some other kind of resource or whatever that might be to solve for it. But it's been a conversation this year, especially following all the positioning work and the kind of investments we've made into how we're going to bring this to market. Is like we got to be serious about this and put the right energy and resources in place to make it happen. But that's something that comes up a lot. Is
That's pretty
yeah,
interesting. Is it because there's no dedicated resource for it?
I think it's dedicated resource to some degree, and it's just simply that we've had people who are assigned to or leading other client accounts trying to execute on some of this work as well.
Yeah.
And they know that if,
They
they're
can push it.
yeah, that their big
They know they
client,
yeah.
and I'm not gonna say, well, we shouldn't have delivered for this client. You should have gotten this for Pierce PR. Isn't gonna come out of my mouth necessarily. So, I think it's just we probably need to restructure the way we resource how we do this, which is something we've been actively talking through.
That's
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
That's pretty
yeah, but it's been a
mm,
challenge.
that's a tough challenge. Almost like need to pay yourself so that so that it's, it's just as valuable as a paying client.
I know, and we've talked about, like, do we need to hire an outside PR resource to do PR for us? It sounds insane. Like, it
Yeah, it
sounds
sounds silly.
crazy
Yeah.
that we would do that, but it's like, well, let's think through all the options available to us and then
Yeah.
decide. So anyways, but yeah, it's been a funny conversation. And fortunately, like I said, I know we can do a better job of it. We just got to figure out how and the who, not how, what resources will actually stay on this and make sure that these things get across the finish line. And I think that's going to be the big part of the solve,
Mm,
answering that
okay.
question.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. It was awesome to learn more about Pierce and about you. And congratulations on the success. 10 years is awesome. Most people don't make it that
Thank
long.
you.
So
Thank
congrats.
you.
And thank you again. And thank everybody for listening. And we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.